You ever look around and realize your life feels like it's buffering? Like the loading bar is stuck at 87% and you've been staring at the screen for what feels like years? You're doing okay, you're functioning, you're surviving. But deep down, something's off. Not broken, not catastrophic, just stuck. That stuckness is a quiet kind of suffering. It doesn't scream, it sighs. It shows up in your routines, in the way your eyes glaze over in conversations, in the way you keep checking your phone, hoping something exciting will just fall into your lap. But nothing changes. Nothing ever changes. And that's not life's fault. It's yours. Now hold on. Don't click off. This isn't some self-blame guilt trip. In fact, it's the exact opposite. What I'm saying is, that moment right there, when you feel stuck but weirdly responsible, that's not weakness. That's awareness. That's the spark. Most people spend their lives half asleep, blaming the world, their parents, the government, their boss, or Mercury in retrograde. You notice the loading bar hasn't moved. That alone puts you ahead of 95% of the population. But here's the kicker. Noticing isn't enough. Awareness without action is just a loop, a mental hamster wheel dressed up as insight. You'll binge self-help videos, buy a new journal, try meditation for like 4 days, and then boom, you're back where you started. And not because you're lazy, but because nothing changes until you change something real. That thing isn't always big or dramatic. It's not quitting your job, moving to Bali, or doing an ice bath while chanting affirmations, though hey, you do you. Sometimes it's subtle. It's one internal switch, one decision to stop negotiating with the part of you that's terrified of discomfort. Growth doesn't feel like fireworks. It feels like finally showing up to your own life and saying, all right, we're doing this. No more waiting for motivation. No more searching for the perfect moment. You make the moment, even if your hands are shaking while doing it. And you don't need a 30-step plan to begin. You just need one moment where you stop outsourcing your change to the universe, your horoscope, or the next YouTube video. This is that moment. Stay with me, because I'm going to show you the actual switch that quietly changes everything without screaming for attention. Now here's where most people get it twisted. They think change has to feel like this massive, high-voltage event. Something cinematic, new year, new me, energy, big declarations, gym memberships, deleting half your contacts, cutting your hair, or your ex off. And while those dramatic moments feel like change, they're usually just noise. Real change? It's so quiet, it's almost boring. It's in the moments nobody sees. Like when you decide not to reply to something that would have triggered you last week. Or when you resist that urge to explain yourself. Because for once, your peace is worth more than being understood. It's when you sit in the discomfort of not numbing yourself with your usual distractions. Food, your phone, other people's opinions. And instead, you actually feel what you're feeling. Not analyze it, not spiritualize it. Just sit with it. That's change. That's progress. And it doesn't feel like a dopamine hit. It feels like cleaning a wound. Necessary, uncomfortable, but healing. And here's something wild most people never realize. Change rarely announces itself. You don't wake up one day, glowing and levitating with perfect clarity. Sometimes the most powerful changes feel like nothing at all, until you look back and realize, whoa, I don't react the way I used to. You stopped chasing people who wouldn't cross the street for you. You stopped entertaining thoughts that used to rent space in your mind for free. You stopped saying yes just to avoid awkwardness. And you didn't do it all in one day. You just stopped participating in your own suffering, one tiny moment at a time. That's the stuff that moves the needle. That's what actually creates a different life, not the flashy stuff, but the small, consistent moments where you chose to respond differently, even when nobody was watching, kind of thing, No? I must be the only one. And here's the best part. Those tiny shifts, they compound. They start changing what you tolerate, what you attract, and how you see the world. They make you less reactive, more grounded, and way harder to manipulate, which is a very attractive energy to carry, by the way. This isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming aware and then doing something with that awareness. Not later, not next week, now. But here's the tricky part. Most people never see coming. Your environment will start resisting your change the moment you begin to change. People don't talk about this enough. You begin standing up straighter, setting better boundaries, caring less about irrelevant nonsense, and suddenly, others act like you violated some silent contract. A friend might say, "You've changed," but not like it's a compliment, more like an accusation. And in that moment, the temptation to shrink back into who you used to be is real. Why? Because humans are wired for comfort, not for transformation. And guess what? You being different makes people uncomfortable, not because you're doing anything wrong, but because your change quietly exposes where they're still stuck. And that doesn't always sit well. So you'll start hearing things like, "You used to be more fun. Why are you being so distant lately?" Or the classic, "You're acting like you're better than us." No, you're not acting like you're better. You're just no longer acting like you're less. And this is the part where many people self-sabotage. They retreat. They water themselves down. They laugh at jokes that don't land anymore, agree with opinions that feel hollow, just to avoid standing out too much. But change doesn't happen in silence. It echoes. And if the people around you don't know how to handle that echo, that's not your problem to solve. And let's be honest, how long are you going to dim your light just to be digestible to people who aren't even nourishing to your spirit? You see, change requires a level of emotional risk. It means being willing to lose things, people, places, patterns that are no longer aligned with who you're becoming. And that sounds poetic until you're in the thick of it, mourning the familiar while building the unknown. But that's how you know it's real. Real change costs you something, not in a destructive way, but in a refining way. It strips away the noise, the neediness, the performative you, until you're left with someone clearer, quieter, and more solid than you've ever been. You stop living on edge, waiting for approval like it's oxygen. You stop negotiating your worth like it's on clearance. And slowly, you begin to trust yourself, not because you read it in a book or saw it on a quote, but because you've earned that trust through thousands of small decisions where you chose truth over comfort. And when that shift clicks, even just a little, you're no longer the same. Not louder, not harder, just less available to nonsense. And that's when life starts moving differently around you, because you're finally moving differently within yourself. The funny thing is, once you stop being overly available to people's opinions, their drama, their endless expectations, you start noticing how much quieter your inner world becomes. Not silent in a boring way, quiet in a peaceful way. The kind of quiet where you can finally hear yourself think. You begin to notice the things you used to react to instantly now just pass by. It's not numbness, it's clarity. Someone talks over you in a conversation. You don't need to reclaim the spotlight. Someone gives you that passive-aggressive tone. You don't need to decode it like some ancient riddle. You just observe it, file it under "not my problem," and carry on with your peace. And that's where the real shift happens. Not when you force yourself to not care, but when your nervous system genuinely stops being triggered by every gust of wind. Because caring too much is exhausting, not just mentally, but physically. Your body holds on to every micro stress like it's preparing for battle. Your shoulders tense, your jaw clenches, your sleep becomes shallow. All because someone you don't even like might be slightly annoyed at you for saying no to something you didn't want to do. Meanwhile, life is happening, time is moving, and you're spending precious energy trying to manage impressions instead of building alignment. But when you finally step out of that cycle, When you begin to live based on your internal compass instead of external chaos, your entire rhythm changes. You say yes slower. You say no faster. You pause before reacting. You speak less, but when you do, your words carry weight. Not because you're trying to be mysterious, but because silence no longer feels awkward. You're not talking to fill space. You're living in it. And the more you build this inner space, the more you realize most people aren't looking for control. They're looking for certainty. And when they can't find it in themselves, they look for it in you. That's why they push, guilt, pressure, or try to test you. But once you stop playing their game, they either learn to meet you differently, or they exit the arena entirely. And let them. Not everyone is meant to walk with you in every version of your life. Some people were only compatible with the version of you that couldn't say no, that always apologized first, that needed to be liked to feel safe. But now you've updated the operating system. Now you've got better boundaries, clearer vision, and finally, peace that doesn't need permission. And peace like that, it changes everything. And here's the twist most people never see coming. Once you stop bending yourself to fit into spaces you've outgrown, the world doesn't collapse. In fact, it starts to reorganize itself around your new standards. It's wild. You begin to see people reveal who they truly are, not the version they showed when you were always agreeable, always available. Some step back, surprised they can no longer guilt trip you with a sigh. Others get louder, more demanding, like a child testing a boundary. And a rare few, they adjust, they grow with you. Those are the ones who belong. You start to notice that peace isn't found in doing more, but in doing less of what drains you. You no longer feel guilty for leaving a message on read when your energy is low. You're not rushing to explain yourself every time you choose yourself. That mental loop of, what will they think, gets quieter, until one day it's gone. You walk into a room and you're not scanning for approval. You're scanning for alignment, for truth, for energy that feels right, not just familiar. You no longer chase closure. You don't over-explain. You realize that people will misunderstand you from the level they're functioning at, and that's okay. Let them. You've got better things to do, like actually living, like choosing the soft morning light over checking your phone first thing, like making a cup of tea and letting your thoughts be messy without trying to fix them, like saying, I don't know, and feeling zero shame about it, like deleting apps, muting chaos, and walking barefoot just because it feels real. You realize presence is the true currency, that nothing external ever truly changes until you change. Your lens, your posture, your standards. And when you finally stop outsourcing your self-worth to the reactions of others, you stop living in emotional debt. It's liberating. You can laugh without permission. You can be still without guilt. You can disagree without being defensive. You stop asking, is this okay? And start saying, this is me. And weirdly, the less you perform for the world, the more it respects you. People sense it, the shift, the unbothered energy, the confidence that doesn't need to shout, the detachment that isn't cold, just self-possessed. It's like becoming a mountain. You're not moved by every wind. You're not reactive to every echo. You're not desperate to be seen because you finally see yourself. And that, right there, is the power no one can take from you. Let's keep going. You start noticing something strange. You used to be obsessed with progress, chasing it like a dog chasing cars, faster, better, more. But now, instead of sprinting through life, trying to fix everything, you start observing. You notice how much of what you used to call growth was actually just frantic motion to escape stillness. Stillness used to feel like stagnation. Now, it feels like clarity. Because in that stillness, you hear things you used to drown out. Your gut instinct, your quiet preferences, the voice that says no without guilt. And it's in that space where something subtle but profound begins to shift. You stop managing people's perceptions, and you start managing your peace. You let the uncomfortable silence hang when needed. You let things be awkward instead of smoothing over other people's discomfort at your own expense. You walk away from conversations that don't feel honest, not out of arrogance, but because you no longer participate in things that require you to abandon yourself. And the beautiful part is, nothing burns down. In fact, life starts feeling less like a game you're trying to win, and more like a garden you're finally learning how to tend. You realize your energy isn't infinite, it's sacred, and you start spending it like it costs something. You protect your mornings. You say no to draining obligations without offering a 5-paragraph essay of excuses. You leave the party early without needing to be the last one laughing. You don't chase people anymore, not because you're cold, but because you finally understand that someone who wants to stay never makes you run after them. Even in conflict, you don't fight to be understood. You state your truth and let go. You no longer audition for approval. And when people try to pull you back into your old role, the pleaser, the fixer, the over-explainer, you smile, but you don't step back into character. That old version of you was acting for a crowd. This new version is just being. No script, no performance, no filter. And strangely, this version of you has more power, not less. More presence, more pull. People lean in, they listen more closely. Why? Because when you're no longer desperate to be liked, people start liking you for real. You become magnetic, not because you're trying, but because you're anchored, centered, solid. And when people ask how you did it, how you became so calm, so unshakable, you just shrug and say, I stopped trying to be everything for everyone. And maybe, just maybe, that's when life started responding to you. If this hit something real for you, let it stay. And if you want more content like this, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, and I'll meet you in the next one.